The Galactic Council chamber erupted in laughter. Ambassador Zextal felt his four antennae droop as the sound echoed off the crystalline walls, each cruel note cutting deeper than the last. The massive holographic display showed the latest military assessment of his people, the Nethys, and the numbers were as embarrassing as ever. 0.03% combat effectiveness, Milan announced General Chromax, his three heads shaking in synchronized disappointment. Honestly, Zextal, I don't understand why your species was even granted membership in this council. You contribute nothing to our military might. The other ambassadors nodded in agreement. The Vorthak delegation, with their impressive height and natural armor plating, looked particularly amused. Their ambassador, a 7-foot giant named Thuron, leaned back in his chair with obvious satisfaction. Perhaps, Thuron rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. The Nethys should stick to what they do best, hiding behind asteroids and hoping nobody notices them. More laughter filled the chamber. Zextal's pale blue skin flushed darker with shame. It was true that his people were small, barely reaching 4 feet in height. Their limbs were thin, their bodies fragile. They had no natural weapons, no thick hides, no impressive size. In a galaxy where military strength determined respect, the Nethys were seen as nothing more than cosmic jokes. That's enough, came a stern voice from the head of the chamber. Empress Valorian of the Zenthari Empire raised one clawed hand, and the laughter slowly died. While I agree that the Nethys lack conventional military capabilities, they have other uses. Their mathematical and technical skills are adequate for support roles. Adequate. The word stung worse than outright mockery. Zextal had 3 advanced degrees in quantum mechanics and had personally designed half the navigation systems used by council ships. His people had solved countless engineering problems that had stumped other species for centuries. But in the council's eyes, they were just adequate. With respect, Empress, General Chromax continued, the galaxy is becoming more dangerous. The unknown sector has been sending out scout ships. Long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures beyond our borders. We need warriors, not technicians hiding behind computer screens. The unknown sector, even mentioning it made the chamber grow quiet. For decades, no one had been able to penetrate the electromagnetic barriers that surrounded that region of space. Ships that ventured too close simply vanished. Recently, however, strange vessels had been spotted along the border zones. They were unlike anything in the Council's databases, with designs that seemed almost primitive yet somehow threatening. The Nethys will continue to serve in their current capacity, Empress Valorian decided. Technical support and maintenance duties, nothing more. Zextal stood slowly, his small frame barely reaching the podium designed for larger species. If I may, Empress, my people have always been willing to prove ourselves. Perhaps if we were given a chance to prove yourselves? Thuron interrupted with a booming laugh. How exactly would you do that? Challenge someone to a mathematics competition? The day the Nethys become warriors is the day the galaxy ends. The chamber erupted in renewed laughter. Even some of the more diplomatic species couldn't hide their amusement. Zextal felt something break inside him. His people had endured centuries of this treatment, always being relegated to the background, always being dismissed as weak and worthless. Very well, he said quietly, but his voice carried through the chamber. We will continue to serve as we always have. But remember this day, honored delegates. Remember your words. As the council session moved on to other matters, Zextal gathered his belongings and prepared to leave. The diplomatic transport back to the Nethys homeworld would take 3 days, giving him plenty of time to compose his report. How could he tell his people that once again they had been rejected? How could he explain that their offers to contribute more meaningfully to the council's efforts had been met with ridicule? The Nethys had always been peaceful. Their homeworld of Nethys Prime was a beautiful place of floating cities and crystalline spires. They had achieved faster-than-light travel through mathematics and careful engineering, rather than brute force. Their ships were small but efficient, their technology elegant but understated. They believed in solving problems through intelligence and cooperation, but the galaxy didn't seem to value those traits. As Zextal's shuttle departed the council station, he gazed out at the stars. Somewhere out there in the unknown sector, something was stirring. The other species were right about one thing. The galaxy was becoming more dangerous, but they were wrong about something else. They assumed that military might was the only answer to every threat. The Nethys had survived for millennia not because they were strong, but because they were smart. They had learned to adapt, to find solutions that others couldn't see. When the Vorthak had faced an energy crisis that threatened to destroy their civilization, it was Nethys engineers who had designed the fusion reactors that saved them. When the Zenthari Empire needed new FTL drive systems, it was Nethys mathematicians who had made the calculations possible. But gratitude was short-lived in the Council. Military strength was the only currency that mattered, and the Nethys had none to offer, or so everyone believed. As his shuttle entered hyperspace, Zextal made a decision. When he returned to Nethys Prime, he would meet with the High Council of his people. It was time to discuss something that had been debated for decades but never acted upon. The Nethys had always chosen to remain in their assigned role, hoping that patience and loyalty would eventually earn them respect. Perhaps it was time to try a different approach. The stars streaked past the viewport, and Zextal allowed himself a small smile. The other species thought they knew everything about the Nethys. They thought they understood what his people were capable of. They had made the same mistake that countless others had made throughout galactic history. They had underestimated the power of the underestimated. The journey home would give him time to plan. Time to consider possibilities that had never been explored. Time to think about what would happen when the galaxy finally realized that strength came in many forms. And time to wonder what they would find when they finally made contact with whatever was waiting in the unknown sector. 3 weeks later, Zextal stood in the primary laboratory of Nethys Prime's most advanced research facility. The High Council had listened to his proposal with the same careful attention they gave to all complex problems. After days of deliberation, they had reached a unanimous decision. It was time for the Nethys to chart their own course. Ambassador, Dr. Velira said, her antennae twitching with excitement as she studied the readings on her screen. We're receiving something extraordinary from the long-range sensors. The electromagnetic barriers around the unknown sector just disappeared. Zextal moved quickly to her station. The display showed a real-time map of the galactic border region, and where the mysterious energy field had blocked all sensors for decades, there was now empty space. Clear, readable space. How long ago? He asked. 17 hours. But that's not the most interesting part. Velira's fingers danced across the control panel, bringing up a new set of readings. We're detecting multiple ships emerging from that region. Small vessels, unknown configuration. They're not matching any design in our databases. Have you informed the Council? Not yet. According to protocol, we should report this immediately to General Chromax's office, but she hesitated, her pale blue skin deepening slightly. Given recent events, I thought you might want to see this first. Zextal understood. The High Council of Nethys had not explicitly ordered them to withhold information from the Galactic Council, but there was an unspoken agreement that the Nethys would begin prioritizing their own interests. If these unknown ships presented an opportunity, it would be foolish to hand it over to species that had consistently dismissed them. Show me everything, he said. The data that appeared on the screen was fascinating. The unknown vessels were indeed small, roughly the same size as Nethys ships. Their propulsion systems were primitive by Council standards, using some kind of chemical rocket technology that should have made interstellar travel impossible. Yet here they were, somehow crossing the vast distances between stars. The designs are completely alien, Velira explained. Not alien as in different species, but alien as in unlike anything we've ever encountered. Look at this. She highlighted a portion of the sensor data. Their ships appear to be built around a central cylinder with multiple sections. The construction materials are basic metal alloys, not the advanced composites everyone else uses. Any signs of hostile intent? None detected. In fact, they seem to be broadcasting some kind of signal. Definitely artificial, definitely intelligent, but not in any language we recognize. The mathematical structure is fascinating, though. It's almost like they're trying to establish communication protocols. Zextal studied the data for several minutes. This was exactly the kind of situation the Nethys excelled at. First contact scenarios requiring careful analysis and patient communication. The other Council species would likely respond with military vessels and demands for surrender. The Vorthak especially had a tendency to assume that any unknown species was automatically a threat. Dr. Velira, he said slowly, how quickly could we prepare a small expedition to make contact with these ships? Her antennae perked up with interest. The science vessel Quantum Dream is fully equipped for first contact protocols. We could launch within 12 hours. But Ambassador, shouldn't we inform the Council first? Eventually, yes. But consider this. When has the Council ever allowed the Nethys to take the lead on anything important? If we report this now, General Chromax will send a battle fleet. These unknown beings will either be destroyed or intimidated into submission. We'll never learn what they might have offered. Valera nodded slowly. And if we make peaceful contact first? Then we establish the relationship on Nethys terms. We prove that our approach has value. We show the galaxy that sometimes wisdom is more effective than weapons. The decision was made quickly. Within hours, the Quantum Dream was prepared for launch. The ship was small by Council standards, but represented the pinnacle of Nethys engineering. Its advanced sensors could analyze everything from quantum fluctuations to biological signatures. Its communication arrays were designed to decode and transmit in thousands of different formats. Most importantly, it was equipped with the most sophisticated translation algorithms in known space. Captain Mordan, a veteran of dozens of first contact missions, reviewed the mission parameters as they entered hyperspace. The signals we're intercepting are definitely getting clearer, she reported to Zextal via subspace communication. These beings are actively trying to communicate. They're broadcasting mathematical sequences, basic physics principles, even what appears to be artistic patterns. Any indication of their technological level? That's the puzzling part. Their ships are primitive, but their communication methods show remarkable sophistication. It's as if they've developed advanced information theory while still using basic engineering. The journey to the contact point took 18 hours. When the Quantum Dream dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the former barrier zone, they immediately detected the unknown vessels. There were 5 of them, arranged in a loose formation. Each ship was indeed built around a central cylindrical section, with various modules attached in what seemed like a practical rather than aesthetic arrangement. "Captain," came an excited voice from the communication station. "They're responding to our presence, changing their signal patterns. They know we're here. Are they taking any aggressive actions?" "Negative. If anything, they seem curious. They're scanning us with some kind of low-power energy beam. Very gentle, very careful. Not the kind of scan you'd use as a weapon." Captain Mordan made the decision that would change galactic history. "Open a communication channel. All frequencies. Let's see if we can talk to them." The response was immediate. A flood of signals poured through space, carrying mathematical concepts, scientific principles, and something that could only be described as eager friendship. The universal translator worked frantically to decode the patterns, and slowly, words began to appear on the communication screen. Greetings, peaceful intentions, seek knowledge, explore together. And then, clearer than anything before, came a message that made everyone on the bridge stop breathing. We are humans. We come in peace. We seek friends among the stars, humans. The word appeared in the Nethys database as completely unknown. But as the conversation continued over the following hours, a picture began to emerge of a species that was remarkably similar to the Nethys in philosophy, if not in biology. The humans came from a small blue planet in what they called the Sol System. They had achieved spaceflight through determination and clever engineering rather than brute force. They valued knowledge, cooperation, and peaceful exploration. Most importantly, they had been searching for other intelligent life for generations. "You are the first friendly species we have encountered," transmitted the human captain, someone called Sarah Chen. "We hope this is the beginning of a long friendship." Zextal, monitoring the conversation from Nethys Prime, felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. These humans, these newcomers to the galactic stage, were treating the Nethys as equals, as potential partners, as friends. For the first time in Council history, someone wasn't laughing at the Nethys. They were asking for their help. The first joint meeting between humans and Nethys took place aboard a specially configured space station at the neutral coordinates where first contact had occurred. Zextal had insisted on complete secrecy from the Galactic Council until they better understood what they were dealing with. What he discovered in those first few days changed everything he thought he knew about strength and survival. Captain Sarah Chen was unlike any being Zextal had ever encountered. She stood nearly 6 feet tall with strange features that included hair covering only the top of her head, and small, intense eyes that seemed to absorb every detail around her. But it wasn't her physical appearance that impressed him. It was her mind. "Your translation protocols are incredible," Sarah said, studying the data that Dr. Velira had shared. "We've been working on universal communication theory for decades, but you've actually solved problems we didn't even know existed, and your approach to faster-than-light travel is fascinating," Velira replied, her antennae bright with excitement. "Using controlled quantum entanglement as a navigation aid? We never considered that application." Zextal watched the exchange with growing amazement. For hours, the humans and Nethys had been sharing technical knowledge, and both species were learning at an incredible rate. The humans had developed technologies that the Nethys had never imagined, while the Nethys had perfected techniques that the humans had only theorized about. "If I may ask," Zextal said during a break in the technical discussions, "how did your species achieve spaceflight with such limited resources?" Sarah smiled, an expression that took some getting used to but seemed to indicate pleasure, stubbornness mostly, and the refusal to accept that something couldn't be done just because it was difficult. She activated a holographic display showing human history. "We started with basic chemical rockets that could barely reach our own moon. Most species would have given up and waited for better technology. But humans, we built bigger rockets. When those weren't good enough, we built even bigger ones. When we couldn't afford bigger ones, we figured out how to make the small ones more efficient." The display showed the progression of human space technology over several centuries. Unlike other species that had made sudden leaps in capability, humans had advanced through thousands of small improvements, each one building on the last. "We call it brute force engineering," explained Dr. James Wright, Sarah's chief science officer. "If we can't solve a problem elegantly, we solve it through pure determination and lots of testing." "But that's incredible," Velira said. "Most species require a complete theoretical framework before attempting practical applications. You went straight to experimentation." "Had to," James replied with a grin. "We're not naturally good at advanced mathematics like you are. We had to learn by doing." Over the following days, a pattern emerged that fascinated Zextal. The humans excelled at practical problem-solving and what they called thinking outside the box. When presented with a challenge, they immediately began looking for unconventional solutions. The Nethys, with their advanced theoretical knowledge, could provide the mathematical foundations that made human innovations actually work. The breakthrough came when they decided to combine their technologies. "The problem with our FTL drives," Sarah explained, "is that we can only make short jumps. We have to stop every few light years to recalibrate our navigation systems manually. And our ships can travel vast distances," Dr. Velira added. "But our engines are not very powerful. We can't carry much cargo or many passengers." "What if we combined them?" suggested Dr. Wright. "Human-style engine design with Nethys navigation systems?" The resulting collaboration produced something neither species could have achieved alone. The hybrid engine design used human engineering principles to create more powerful drives, while Nethys mathematics allowed for precise long-distance navigation. The test flights were beyond successful. They were revolutionary. "This could change everything," Captain Sarah said as they reviewed the test data. "With this technology, we could explore the entire galaxy. We could establish trade routes, conduct scientific expeditions, maybe even find other species who value cooperation over conquest." That last comment sparked an important conversation. As the days passed, the humans learned more about the Galactic Council and the way species were ranked based on military might. The more they heard, the more disturbed they became. "Let me understand this correctly," Sarah said during one evening meeting. "This council judges every species based solely on their ability to wage war?" "Essentially, yes," Zextal confirmed. "Military strength, combat effectiveness, territorial control. These are the metrics that determine respect and influence." "That's insane," Dr. Wright said bluntly. "What about scientific advancement? Cultural contributions? Problem-solving abilities? None of that matters? Not in any meaningful way. The Nethys have contributed more to galactic technology than any other species. But we're still treated as inferior because we're not warriors." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, then looked up with an expression that Zextal was beginning to recognize. It was the same look she got when presented with a seemingly impossible engineering challenge. "What if we changed that?" she said. "Changed what?" "The whole system. What if we showed the galaxy that there are other ways to be strong?" Zextel felt his antennae twitch with nervous energy. Captain, I appreciate the sentiment, but the Council has operated this way for millennia. A handful of humans and Nethys aren't going to change galactic civilization. Maybe not, Sarah agreed. But we could start something. We could prove that cooperation is more powerful than domination. Over the next several weeks, as their technological collaboration deepened, so did their friendship. The humans had a quality that Zextel had never encountered before. They treated every interaction as between equals. They didn't see the Nethys as weak or inferior. They saw them as partners with valuable skills. More importantly, the humans had something that the Galactic Council seemed to lack entirely: imagination. When faced with a problem, they didn't just apply standard solutions. They invented new approaches, often combining ideas from completely different fields. On our world, Sarah explained one day, we have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When we need something badly enough, we find a way to create it, even if it's never been done before. The Council species seem to have lost that ability, Zextel observed. They've become comfortable with their established roles. No one tries anything genuinely new anymore. Then maybe it's time for some fresh perspectives. The plan that emerged from their discussions was ambitious beyond anything either species had attempted. Using their combined technologies, they would establish a new kind of organization. Not a military alliance, but a cooperative network focused on exploration, scientific advancement, and peaceful problem-solving. We call it the Exploration Initiative, Sarah announced during their final planning session, open to any species that values knowledge over conquest, cooperation over domination. The Council won't approve, Zextel warned. Then we don't ask for their approval. We just do it. It was a very human approach to the problem, and Zextel found himself inspired by the audacity of it. The Nethys had spent centuries trying to earn respect within the existing system. Perhaps it was time to create a new system entirely. As the secret meetings concluded and both species prepared to return to their respective worlds, Zextel felt something he hadn't experienced since his youth: excitement about the future. The humans had shown him that strength didn't always come from size or weapons or military might. Sometimes it came from refusing to accept that things couldn't be changed. Sometimes it came from the simple belief that impossible problems just needed impossible solutions, and sometimes it came from finding the right partners who believed in the same impossible dreams. 6 months after first contact, the secret was becoming impossible to hide. Nethys Prime's orbital shipyards were working around the clock, producing vessels that incorporated both human and Nethys technology. The hybrid ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen: sleek, efficient, and capable of incredible performance. Ambassador Zextel stood on the observation deck of the newly completed research station, watching as another joint crew prepared for departure. The sight never failed to amaze him. Humans and Nethys working side by side, their different strengths complementing each other perfectly. "Sir," came a voice behind him. He turned to see Captain Mordan approaching, her expression troubled. "We have a problem. A Vorthak patrol just entered the system." Zextel's antennae drooped. They had known this day would come eventually. The increased activity around Nethys Prime would eventually attract Council attention, but they had hoped for more time to establish their new alliance. "How many ships?" 3 heavy cruisers and a command vessel. They're demanding immediate explanations for what they call unauthorized technological development. Have they detected the human ships? Not yet. Captain Chen moved the human fleet to the far side of the moon when our sensors picked up the Vorthak approach. But they won't stay hidden for long, Zextel sighed. Open a communication channel to the Vorthak fleet. Let's see what Ambassador Theron wants. The holographic display crackled to life, showing the imposing form of the Vorthak ambassador. Theron's 3 heads were arranged in their typical expression of aggressive suspicion, and his massive armored form dominated the screen. "Zextel," Theron rumbled, "explain to me why Nethys ships are suddenly 10 times faster than our intelligence reports indicated possible." "We have made some improvements to our drive systems," Zextel replied carefully. "Nothing that violates any Council regulations. Improvements? Our sensors are detecting energy signatures that don't match anything in our databases. Your ships are using completely unknown technology. The Nethys have always been innovative. Surely the Council doesn't object to scientific advancement." Theron's center head leaned forward menacingly. We object to unauthorized development of potentially military technology. You will submit all technical specifications immediately, or we will be forced to conduct a detailed inspection of your facilities. It was exactly what Zextal had feared. The Council's first response to any new development was to demand control over it. They would take the hybrid technology, claim it for themselves, and probably ban the Nethys from further development. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Zextal said, surprising himself with his own boldness. The technology involves proprietary techniques that cannot be shared without proper agreements. All three of Thuron's heads reared back in shock. Are you refusing a direct order from the Council? I am invoking the Nethys rights under Article 15 of the Council Charter. Any species has the right to protect intellectual property developed through their own efforts. It was a desperate gambit. Article 15 was rarely invoked because most species were too intimidated to challenge Council authority. But technically, Zextal was within his rights. You dare quote regulations to me? Thuron's voice rose to a roar. The Council will hear of this insubordination. You will regret. The communication was suddenly interrupted by another voice. Vorthak Fleet. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human exploration vessel Terra Nova. Please explain your hostile posture toward our allies. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Thuron's three heads swiveled in confusion as his sensors detected the approaching human ships, but what truly shocked him was what the sensors were telling him about those ships. Unknown vessels, Thuron said, his voice now uncertain. Identify yourselves immediately. I already did. I'm Captain Chen, representing the Human Exploration Initiative. These are our partners, the Nethys. We're conducting joint scientific research. Humans? There are no humans in our databases. You are an unknown species operating in Council space without authorization. Sarah's voice carried a note of amusement. Actually, we're operating in Nethys space with their invitation. Last I checked, the Council doesn't control who the Nethys can invite to their home system. Zextal watched in fascination as the human fleet moved into formation around the Nethys vessels. It wasn't an aggressive positioning, but it was clearly protective. The humans were making a statement. They stood with their allies. This is impossible, Thuron muttered, apparently speaking to his crew rather than the open channel. Where did these ships come from? The energy signatures are completely unknown. Perhaps, Captain Chen suggested, you should update your databases. The galaxy is a big place. You can't have cataloged everyone. What happened next would become legendary in the annals of both human and Nethys history. The human fleet, led by Captain Chen's vessel, began a demonstration that left the Vorthak speechless. The ships moved with impossible precision, executing maneuvers that should have been beyond their apparent technology level. They accelerated faster than anything the Vorthak had ever seen, turned in impossibly tight arcs, and maintained perfect formation throughout complex three-dimensional patterns. But the most shocking moment came when the Terra Nova simply vanished. Where did they go? Thuron demanded, his three heads swiveling as his sensors found nothing but empty space. We're right here, came Sarah's calm voice. Suddenly the Terra Nova reappeared directly behind the Vorthak command ship, having somehow moved several thousand kilometers instantaneously. Impossible, Thuron whispered. Human engineering, Sarah replied cheerfully. We call it thinking creatively. You should try it sometime. The demonstration continued for another hour. The human ship showed capabilities that defied conventional understanding of physics. They could apparently teleport short distances, achieve incredible speeds from a standing start, and coordinate their movements with a precision that suggested some kind of telepathic link. Throughout it all, the Nethys ships moved in perfect harmony with their human partners, demonstrating technology that was clearly far beyond what the Council had believed possible. Finally, Captain Chen's voice filled the communication channel again. Ambassador Thuron, I think we've made our point. The Nethys are under the protection of the Human Exploration Initiative. Any threats against them will be considered threats against us. And who exactly are you to make such threats? Thuron demanded, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. We're explorers, scientists, and friends to all peaceful species, but we're also very protective of our allies. I suggest you return to the Council and inform them that the galactic balance of power just shifted. After the Vorthak fleet departed, Zextal met with Captain Chen aboard the Terra Nova. The human ship's interior was a marvel of practical design, with efficient systems that somehow managed to feel welcoming rather than sterile. That was incredible, Zextal said. How did you achieve those maneuvers? The instantaneous movement, the impossible accelerations? Sarah grinned. Trade secrets. But I will say this. Having Nethys navigation systems made it possible. Your mathematical models let us calculate things our computers could never handle. But the technology itself, let's just say that humans have always been good at making things work, even when we don't fully understand why they work. Sometimes the best solutions come from combining theory with pure stubborn determination. Zextal realized that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans weren't just technologically advanced, they were revolutionary. They approached problems in ways that no other species had ever considered. What happens now? He asked. Now we wait and see how the Council responds. But whatever they decide, the Nethys won't face it alone. That's what partners do. They stand together. For the first time in his life, Zextal understood what it meant to have real allies. Not species who tolerated the Nethys for their usefulness, but friends who valued them for who they were. The humans had done more than share technology. They had shared something far more precious: respect, partnership, and the unshakable belief that everyone deserved to be treated as an equal. As he looked out at the combined human and Nethys fleet, Zextal couldn't help but smile. The galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about the power of true cooperation, and somehow he didn't think the Council was going to like what they learned. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called within days of the Vorthak fleet's return. Ambassador Zextal sat in his designated seat, acutely aware of the hostile stares directed at him from across the chamber. The atmosphere was more tense than he had ever experienced. Empress Valorian's voice cut through the murmur of angry voices. The Council recognizes Ambassador Thuron of the Vorthak Confederation. Thuron stood, his massive form radiating indignation. Honorable Empress, I present evidence of a conspiracy that threatens the very foundation of our galactic order. He activated his holographic display, showing sensor readings from the encounter at Nethys Prime. These unknown beings, calling themselves humans, have formed an unauthorized alliance with the Nethys. They possess technology that defies our understanding of physics and have made explicit threats against Council authority. General Chromax leaned forward, his expression grim. What exactly are we dealing with, Ambassador? Your report mentions impossible capabilities. Instantaneous movement across thousands of kilometers, acceleration rates that should tear their ships apart, and coordination that suggests some form of collective consciousness. They appeared and disappeared at will, demonstrated complete superiority over our most advanced warships, and showed no respect for Council jurisdiction. The chamber erupted in concerned chatter. Several ambassadors stood to demand more information, while others called for immediate military action. Furthermore, Thuron continued, raising his voice above the noise, the Nethys have been secretly developing this alliance for months, deliberately concealing it from Council oversight. This represents a clear violation of our treaties regarding technological development and foreign contact. Empress Valorian's gaze fixed on Zextal. Ambassador, you will explain these allegations immediately. Zextal stood slowly, feeling the weight of history pressing down on him. What he said next would determine not just the fate of the human-Nethys alliance, but possibly the future of galactic civilization itself. Honorable Empress, the Nethys have indeed made contact with a species called humans. They are explorers and scientists who seek peaceful cooperation with other intelligent beings. We have shared technology and knowledge in pursuit of mutual benefit. Without Council authorization, General Chromax growled, in direct violation of first contact protocols. The humans emerged from a region of space that has been inaccessible for decades. When the barriers fell, we responded as any responsible species would, with scientific curiosity rather than military suspicion. And the technology demonstrations? Thuron demanded. The threats against Council authority? Zextal took a deep breath. The humans defended their allies when threatened. As for their capabilities, they represent what can be achieved when cooperation replaces competition. The chamber fell silent. It was a direct challenge to the Council's military-focused philosophy, and everyone knew it. Empress Valorian's voice was dangerously quiet. You dare suggest that our methods are inferior to those of this unknown species? Before Zextal could respond, every communication system in the chamber activated simultaneously. A calm, confident voice filled the space. Captain Saracen. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, I am Captain Saracen of the Human Exploration Initiative. I apologize for interrupting your session, but I believe there are some misconceptions that need to be corrected. The security chief immediately began shouting orders.
How are they accessing our systems?
This is supposed to be a secure facility. We're not accessing your systems, Sarah's voice continued. We're simply broadcasting on all frequencies. It's a basic communication technique that any species should be capable of detecting and receiving. General Chromax was on his feet, fury radiating from every line of his body. This is an act of war. Unknown aliens invading our most secure communications. Actually, it's an act of diplomacy. We're requesting permission to address the Council directly regarding our relationship with the Nethys. Permission denied, Empress Valorian snapped. Remove these intruders from our communications immediately. There was a pause, then Sarah's voice returned, now tinged with what sounded like amusement. I'm afraid that's not possible. We're not actually connected to your systems. We're generating this signal from outside your station using focused quantum resonance transmission. Quite harmless, but very difficult to block. The technical impossibility of what she was describing sent ripples of unease through the chamber. If the humans could broadcast directly into the Council's most secure facility, without actually accessing their systems, what else could they do? However, Sarah continued, we respect your authority in your own space. If the Council wishes to discuss our alliance with the Nethys, we're prepared to meet at neutral coordinates. We believe honest dialogue is preferable to military confrontation. There will be no dialogue with unauthorized aliens, General Chromax roared. You will surrender yourselves for interrogation and turn over all technological specifications immediately. The silence that followed was more ominous than any threat could have been. When Sarah spoke again, her voice had lost all traces of humor. General, I need to clarify something important. We came here seeking friendship and cooperation. We found that in the Nethys, but we are not supplicants seeking your approval. We are offering you the opportunity to learn from a different approach to galactic civilization. And if we refuse, Empress Valorian asked, then you continue as you always have and will continue as we choose to. But consider this. The galaxy is vast and you've only explored a fraction of it. There are other species out there. Other civilizations that might appreciate alternatives to military dominance. Some of them might even be stronger than you. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. The humans were suggesting that the Council's grip on galactic power might not be as secure as they believed. We'll give you time to consider, Sarah concluded. But understand this clearly. The Nethys are under our protection. Any hostile action against them will be met with an appropriate response. Captain Chen out. The communications went silent, leaving the chamber in chaos. Dozens of voices shouted conflicting orders and demands, while security teams scrambled to understand how their systems had been bypassed. In the midst of the confusion, Zextal made a decision that surprised even himself. He stood and walked calmly toward the exit. Where are you going? Empress Valorian demanded. To rejoin my allies, Zextal replied. The humans have offered the Council a chance for peaceful dialogue. If you choose military confrontation instead, the Nethys will not participate in actions against our friends. You are a member of this Council. You have obligations. Zextal paused at the chamber door. My first obligation is to my people, and my people have chosen to stand with those who treat us as equals rather than servants. The next few hours would determine the course of galactic history. Back on Nethys Prime, the combined human and Nethys fleets were preparing for the possibility of war. But they were also preparing for something else, the chance to prove that cooperation was stronger than conquest. In the depths of space, other civilizations that had remained hidden from the Council were taking notice. The electromagnetic barriers that had concealed the unknown sector were falling throughout the galaxy, revealing dozens of species that had chosen isolation over submission to the Council's military hierarchy. Some of them had been watching the development of the human Nethys alliance with great interest. As Zextal's shuttle departed the Council station, he received a priority communication from Captain Chen. Ambassador, we've detected massive energy signatures throughout the galaxy. It appears we're not the only ones who've been waiting for an alternative to the current system. Looking out at the stars, Zextal realized that the galaxy was about to change in ways no one could have predicted. The Council had built their power on the assumption that military might was the only thing that mattered. But they had never considered what would happen if someone proved them wrong. The humans and Nethys had started something that couldn't be stopped. The question now was whether the galaxy would embrace change or fight desperately to maintain the old ways. Either way, the age of military dominance was ending. The age of cooperation had begun. The war began exactly as Captain Sarah Chen had predicted it would, with the Council making every possible mistake. General Chromax assembled the largest military fleet in galactic history, 1,200 warships from 7 different species, all converging on the coordinates where the Human-Nethys Alliance had agreed to meet for negotiations. Instead of diplomats, he brought weapons. "This is your final warning," Chromax broadcast across all frequencies as his massive fleet surrounded the small group of human and Nethys vessels. "Surrender immediately and submit to Council authority or face the consequences." From the bridge of the Terra Nova, Captain Chen watched the tactical display with calm interest. The Council fleet was impressive by traditional standards. Massive dreadnoughts bristling with energy weapons, fighter squadrons that could darken space with their numbers, and enough firepower to sterilize entire planets. "Captain," reported Dr. Wright from the science station, "I'm reading 1,237 vessels. Mixed composition but heavily weighted toward Vorthak and Zenthari designs. They're maintaining standard battle formations." "Standard formations," Chen mused. "Always their first mistake." Beside her, Ambassador Zextal studied the enemy fleet with his usual analytical precision. "Their deployment suggests they expect a conventional engagement. They haven't considered that we might not follow their rules." "Their second mistake," Chen agreed. "Mr. Wright, open a channel to all ships in our alliance." The communication network that activated included not just the human and Nethys vessels, but dozens of other ships that had appeared throughout the galaxy over the past few weeks. Species that had hidden from the Council for centuries were emerging from concealment, drawn by the promise of an alternative to military domination. "All Allied vessels, this is Captain Chen. You know the plan. Remember, we're not here to destroy them. We're here to prove that there's a better way." General Chromax's voice crackled across space. "You are outnumbered 50-1. Your only choice is surrender." "General," Chen replied, "you're making the same mistake everyone always makes. You're assuming that numbers are the only thing that matters. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations to come, if any of those academies survived to see the new galactic order." The Yao Allied fleet didn't attack in any conventional sense. Instead, they simply vanished. Every single ship, human, Nethys, and their new allies, disappeared from sensors simultaneously. The Council fleet found themselves firing at empty space, their targeting systems unable to lock onto anything. "Impossible," Chromax shouted. "Where did they go?" The answer came from everywhere at once. Allied ships began appearing throughout the Council formation, not as attackers but as uninvited observers. They materialized next to Council vessels, close enough to touch but making no aggressive moves. "How are you doing this?" Chromax demanded, his voice approaching panic. "Cooperative engineering," Chen replied cheerfully. "The Nethys figured out the mathematical principles. We figured out how to build it, and our new allies provided some very interesting refinements. Turns out that when you combine the knowledge of 30 different species, you can accomplish amazing things." Dr. Wright's voice joined the channel. "It's really quite elegant. We're not violating physics so much as interpreting it more creatively. Reality, it turns out, is much more flexible than most people assume." The psychological effect on the Council forces was immediate and devastating. Their weapons were useless against targets they couldn't predict or track. Their numerical advantage meant nothing when the enemy could appear anywhere at will. Worst of all, they were being lectured while being completely outmaneuvered. "Surrender," Chromax screamed. "I order you to surrender." "General," came a new voice, one that made several Council captains gasp in recognition. "This is Admiral Corthex of the Dimensional Watchers. We've been observing galactic civilization for 3,000 years, waiting for someone worthy of contact. Today, we choose our side." The ships that materialized around Admiral Corthex's fleet were unlike anything the Council had ever seen. They seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially elsewhere, their forms shifting and flowing like liquid starlight. "The Dimensional Watchers are a myth," Chromax protested. "We prefer to think of ourselves as selective," Corthex replied. "And we've selected the Human-Nethys Alliance as the future of galactic civilization." More fleets began appearing. species with names the Council had never heard, technologies that defied conventional understanding, and all of them united by a single principle: cooperation was stronger than conquest. "This is impossible," whispered Empress Valorian from her command ship. "How many of you are there?" "More than you ever imagined," Captain Chen answered. "The galaxy is full of species that chose to hide rather than submit to your military hierarchy. Today they're choosing to stand up." The Council fleet was now completely surrounded by Allied vessels that appeared and disappeared at will. But despite their overwhelming technological superiority, the Allies made no move to attack. Instead, they waited. "What do you want?" Chromax finally asked, his voice defeated. "The same thing we've always wanted," Chen replied. "Peaceful coexistence, scientific cooperation, the chance for every species to develop according to their own values rather than yours. And if we refuse, then you continue as you were but in a much smaller galaxy. Every species that values cooperation over conquest will join our alliance. Every planet that prefers trade to tribute will choose us over you. Every civilization that believes in equality rather than dominance will find a new home with us." The truth of it was already becoming apparent. Throughout Council space, planets were declaring independence. Species that had been forced into submission were rising up, protected by Allied fleets that could appear anywhere instantly. The Council's grip on galactic civilization was dissolving in real time. "You're destroying the galactic order," Empress Valorian accused. "No," Ambassador Zextal interjected, speaking for the first time since the confrontation began. "We're replacing it with something better. Something based on respect rather than fear, cooperation rather than conquest." "The Nethys used to be a joke," Thuron said bitterly from his command ship. "How did you become this powerful?" "We didn't become powerful," Zextal replied. "We became equal. And equality, it turns out, is the most powerful force in the galaxy." The standoff continued for hours. The Council fleet remained trapped within the Allied formation, unable to fight enemies they couldn't target, unwilling to surrender to species they had always considered inferior. But as reports continued to pour in from throughout the galaxy, it became clear that the war was already over. The Council's authority was crumbling everywhere. Planets were joining the new alliance faster than the updates could be processed. Species that had hidden for millennia were emerging to offer their support. The entire structure of galactic civilization was reorganizing itself around principles of cooperation and mutual respect. Finally, Captain Chen made the offer that would end the Council's reign forever. "General Chromax, Empress Valorian, members of the Galactic Council, we extend to you the same offer we've made to every species in the galaxy. Join our alliance as equals. Contribute your knowledge and abilities to our common goals. Help us build a civilization where strength comes from cooperation rather than conquest." "And if we refuse?" Valorian asked. "Then you're free to continue as you were in whatever space remains to you. But understand this, the galaxy has moved beyond military dominance. The age of cooperation has begun whether you join it or not." The Council faced an impossible choice: adapt to a new reality or become irrelevant in their own galaxy. For species that had built their entire identity around military superiority, it was perhaps the hardest decision they had ever been asked to make. But as they looked around at the Allied fleets that filled space in every direction, at the impossible technologies that made their weapons useless, at the dozens of species they had never known existed, one thing became clear: the galaxy had indeed changed, and there was no changing it back. 5 years later, Ambassador Zextal stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, the massive structure that had replaced the old Council headquarters as the center of galactic civilization. Through the transparent walls, he could see ships from hundreds of different species coming and going in peaceful cooperation. The station itself was a marvel of collaborative engineering. Human ingenuity had designed the basic framework. Nethys mathematics had solved the structural problems, and dozens of other species had contributed their own unique technologies. The result was something no single civilization could have achieved: a truly universal meeting place. "Hard to believe it's only been 5 years," said Captain Sarah Chen, joining him at the observation window. Her hair was now streaked with silver, and there were lines around her eyes that spoke of the incredible challenges they had overcome together. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime," Zextal agreed. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday." Below them, the station's main conference chamber was hosting the weekly assembly of the Galactic Cooperation Alliance. Representatives from over 300 species were discussing everything from trade agreements to joint scientific expeditions. The atmosphere was lively, sometimes heated but always respectful. "Any word from the council remnant?" Sarah asked. General Chromax's faction is still maintaining their isolation in the Outer Rim territories. About 40 systems still follow the old military hierarchy. Empress Valorian's group has been making overtures about joining the alliance, but they want guaranteed leadership positions. Sarah laughed. Some things never change. They still don't understand that leadership in the alliance is earned through contribution, not claimed through force. It had taken time for the new system to stabilize. The transition from military dominance to cooperative governance hadn't been smooth. Some species had struggled to adapt to treating former enemies as equals. Others had tried to exploit the new freedoms for personal gain. But gradually, the benefits of cooperation had become impossible to ignore. Trade flourished between species that had never communicated before. Scientific advances accelerated as knowledge was shared freely, rather than hoarded for military advantage. Conflicts that might once have led to wars were resolved through negotiation and compromise. The galaxy was becoming prosperous in ways the old council had never achieved. Dr. Valera's team made another breakthrough yesterday, Zextal mentioned. They've successfully integrated Dimensional Watcher phasing technology with human teleportation systems. We can now transport entire cities instantaneously. And the medical cooperation program? Even more successful. Combining human adaptability research with Zenthari regeneration techniques and Vorthak genetic engineering has produced treatments for diseases that were previously incurable. Life expectancy across the galaxy has increased by an average of 30%. Sarah nodded with satisfaction. This is what we dreamed about during those first secret meetings. A galaxy where every species contributes their best abilities to help everyone. The transformation hadn't been limited to technology and medicine. Cultural exchange had exploded throughout the Alliance. Human art forms were being performed on worlds thousands of light years from Earth. Nethys mathematical poetry was inspiring new forms of expression among dozens of species. The galaxy was becoming richer in every sense of the word. Speaking of dreams, Sarah continued, have you heard about the expedition to the Andromeda Galaxy? Zextal's antennae perked up with interest. I heard rumors. Is it really possible?
Dr. Wright thinks so.
Using combined alliance technologies, we could make the journey in about 6 months. The question is whether we're ready for whatever we might find there. Unknown species, unknown technologies, unknown challenges. Zextal mused. Sounds like exactly the kind of opportunity humans love. And exactly the kind of complex problem that Nethys excel at solving, Sarah replied with a grin. Through the observation window, they could see a group of young beings from different species working together on some kind of engineering project. The sight had become common throughout. Alliance space, mixed teams collaborating on challenges that would have been impossible for any single species to tackle alone. The children growing up in this new galaxy won't even understand how things used to be, Zextal observed. To them, cooperation will be natural. Competition will be the foreign concept. That might be our greatest achievement, Sarah agreed. We didn't just change the political structure of the galaxy. We changed how entire civilizations think about strength and success. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Zextal activated his personal communicator, and Admiral Corthex's distinctive voice filled the air. Ambassador Captain, I have remarkable news from the deep space monitoring stations. We've detected organized radio transmissions from the Triangulum Galaxy. Another galactic civilization appears to be attempting contact. Sarah and Zextal exchanged glances. First contact with an entirely different galaxy would be the ultimate test of everything they had built. Are the signals peaceful in nature? Zextal asked. The mathematical patterns suggest scientific curiosity rather than military intent. They appear to be broadcasting information about their own civilization. Star charts, basic physics, cultural achievements. It's very similar to the approach humans used when they first emerged from the unknown sector. Then we respond the same way we did then, Sarah decided. With open minds, extended hands, and the offer of friendship. Agreed. But this time we have the advantage of experience. We know how to build alliances that work. As they made their way to the communication center to coordinate the galaxy's response to this new contact, Zextal reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. 5 years ago, the Nethys had been dismissed as weak and irrelevant. The humans had been unknown explorers seeking their place among the stars. Today, their partnership had transformed an entire galaxy. The Galactic Cooperation Alliance now included species from every corner of known space. Conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. Scientific knowledge flowed freely between civilizations. Trade and cultural exchange had created unprecedented prosperity. Most importantly, every species was valued for their unique contributions rather than judged by their military capabilities. "You know what I find most satisfying?" Sarah said as they entered the bustling communication center. "Nobody laughs at the Nethys anymore." "No," Zextal agreed, watching as his people worked alongside humans, dimensional watchers, reformed Vorthak, and dozens of other species in perfect harmony. But more importantly, nobody has reason to. We've all learned to see strength where we never looked for it before. The incoming transmission from the Triangulum Galaxy would be answered by representatives from the entire Alliance, mathematical proofs from the Nethys, cultural exchanges from the humans, technological demonstrations from the Dimensional Watchers, and contributions from every species that had chosen cooperation over conquest. If the beings in that distant galaxy were anything like the old Galactic Council, they were in for quite a surprise. They would discover that the greatest strength in the universe wasn't military might or territorial control or technological superiority, was the simple willingness to treat others as equals. As the Alliance prepared to make contact with an entirely new galaxy, one thing was certain: whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And together, there was no problem they couldn't solve, no obstacle they couldn't overcome, no dream they couldn't achieve. The age of cooperation had not just begun, it was spreading to the stars themselves. And somewhere in the depths of space, new voices were preparing to join the chorus of civilizations that had learned the most important lesson in the universe. Nobody is truly strong alone, but everyone is stronger together.